So, the world's full of bad people, right? And at the top of the list are diddlers. But for some reason, the government seems way more interested in protecting them. So instead of talking about them, I'm stuck covering these guys instead. So here are some absolutely horrible people who actually did some good things. Hitler, famous Jew hater, war starter, and the guy who made it unacceptable to do this. But can we find something good about him? Yes, we can. Hitler loved animals. Probably a little bit too much. And like most crazy cat ladies, he hated people. So he took their rights and gave them to animals instead. In 1933, he passed the Animal Protection Act, banning mistreatment, cruelty, and experimentation on animals. Force feeding geese? Yep, that's illegal. Hunting animals for movies? Straight to jail. Hunting restrictions? Of course. But treating humans insanely worse than animals? Still perfectly fine, baby. He essentially replaced hunting animals with hunting humans. But he didn't want to kill all humans. See, he wanted what was best for his Aryan people, which kinda almost led to the mass extinction of the Jews. But it also led to one of the first and the most advanced anti-smoking campaigns in the world. So yeah, Hitler hated smoking as much as he hated the Jews. And since cigarettes were corrupting the pure Aryan body, he needed to get rid of them, so he waged the war on the tobacco industry. At least for the people he didn't see as subhuman monkeys anyways. If you had darker skin or a big nose, nah, go ahead, smoke it up. It would save him on the gas bills. So was this the best thing he did? Yeah, no. His greatest deed? The guy killed Hitler. Ted Bundy, the serial killer with James Bond level riz. He had enough charisma to make a nun second guess her vows. But before he went full psycho mode, before the nationwide manhunt, before the courtroom fan club, and before he started getting fan mail full of feet pics, Bundy was actually saving lives. Yeah, Ted frickin' Bundy worked at a suicide prevention hotline. And with nothing but his voice and that serial killer charm, he convinced countless people not to off themselves, just sweet talk them right back into their miserable lives. But now they had a fresh perspective that life is beautiful, precious, and worth living. Until they check the prices of eggs these days. But let's be real, this was the perfect training grounds for him. It was a place where he could practice getting people to do exactly what he wanted them to do. And at some point, saving lives just wasn't hitting the same, so he started taking them instead. Saddam Hussein. He was Iraq's big boss till 2003, aka the year he finally lost his 24-year game of Risk to the Americans. His resume? Countless war crimes, mass executions, wiping out entire villages, and going full Breaking Bad with the chemical weapons. Sounds pretty bad, right? That's because it is. But Saddam was a little different from other dictators. He knew that knowledge is power. So in between all the famine, destruction, and human rights violations, Saddam forced people to go to school. And unlike his country, tuition was free. Under his rule, Iraq's literacy rates skyrocketed. No more illiterates, just a nation full of traumatized, educated citizens who knew exactly how screwed they were. Maybe he did it to strengthen his empire. Maybe it was just another form of torture. Because hey, now his people could read about how bad they had it. Except for women. Not because they weren't allowed to read. They could. But because under Saddam, women actually had equal rights. Which is more than we can say for a lot of countries. Did you know that there's always an Asian better than you? No one proved that harder than Genghis Khan. This guy wasn't just good at war. He was the god of genocide. He wiped out 10% of the world's population like it was a World of Warcraft side quest. And if mass murder wasn't impressive enough, this guy was also the undefeated champion of baby making. Between his 65 years of pillaging, he somehow managed to father more kids than anyone in history. His DNA is still floating around 0.5% of the world's population today. But beyond the war crime and mass involuntary motherhood, Genghis Khan was actually kinda progressive. See, when Christians conquered, you had two options. You convert or you die. Genghis, he didn't give a shit about what god you prayed to. As long as you paid your taxes and didn't start problems, you could worship whatever sky daddy you wanted. Elephant god? Cool. Chubby baby? No problem. Guide nailed to a stick? Okie dokie, artichokey. In fact, he even exempted religious leaders from taxes, hosted open debates between different faiths, and personally invited religious leaders to his court. Which, let's be real, was probably just an excuse for him to start some drama. But still, pretty progressive guy. Just like our next guy, Jim Jones. He was the leader of the People's Temple cult and had all the premium DLC upgrades that came with it. Increased manipulation skills, control, forced sex acts abilities, and of course, a little torture for some extra flavor. But what did he use his abilities for? The Jonestown Massacre. Jones convinced his followers to ditch America and move to South America, where he built his own little kingdom, Jonestown. It was a paradise, a utopia, a beautiful, peaceful community that I would compare to a prison camp in Russia for Ukrainians. But one day, a US congressman decided to swing by Jonestown to check out this fantastic new society. But some of Jones's followers see this as their only chance to escape, so they try to bounce with him. Bad move. Jones wasn't about to let that slide. so he sends his goons to the airport and has them gunned down on the tarmac, including the congressman himself. Of course, at this point, he knows his cult dream is over. So what does he do? He pulls off one of the worst mass suicides in American history. Nearly 1,000 people were forced to drink the cyanide-laced grape drink. And if someone didn't want to, too bad. Armed guards were there to help with that decision. Before all this absolute insanity, Jones actually had some decent takes. He was anti-nuke, he was anti-racism, and he pushed for racial equality so hard, it became a core tenet of his cult. The dude even worked as the director of a human rights commission in Indianapolis, where he desegregated churches, restaurants, hospitals, he fought white supremacists, and he supported black families facing discrimination. Jones was basically the OG social justice warrior before it was a meme. But did he actually care about any of this? Or was it just him laying the groundwork to create his own personal cult empire? We'll never know. Either way, he still did more for racial equality than some politicians today. Al Capone, America's most famous gangster. When he wasn't ordering hits, smacking his own guys with baseball bats, pimping, bootlegging, drug trafficking, or casually turning Chicago into GTA, Capone was out there playing Robin Hood. He donated to charities, handed out Christmas presents to poor kids, and he even opened a soup kitchen during the Great Depression. And we're not talking about some half-assed operation. No, this place served breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and if you were a fat bastard, yeah, you could get seconds. No ID, no questions, just free food. And in 1 year, Capone's kitchen dished out over 120,000 meals to the poor, homeless, and unemployed. Wanna guess what actually got him locked up? Tax evasion. Because if there's one thing the US government won't stand for, it's a first-generation American skipping out on his taxes. So the feds threw him in prison, and his charity work died with him. Moral of the story? You don't fuck with the tax man. Oh, and apparently there's a fun little rumor that Capone lobbied the government to put expiration dates on milk bottles. But I couldn't find any solid proof, so let's just pretend it's true. Pablo Escobar, the king of cocaine himself. This man didn't just kill people, he wiped out entire bloodlines. Over 4,000 bodies to his name, probably way more. This was a guy who bombed a plane just to take out one guy. He killed over 100 passengers in the process, and he also detonated a government building, wiping out 50 plus people in a single explosion. Dude was basically trying to be Thanos with a mustache. But if you lived in Medellin, Escobar wasn't a monster, he was a damn saint. He built hospitals, stadiums, and housing for the poor. He constructed schools and sports fields. He developed the Barrio Pablo Escobar, a neighborhood for 13,000 people who used to live in a literal dump. The guy poured millions into infrastructure. He planted trees, built roller rinks, cleaned up soccer fields. He was practically there to gentrify slums like a cartel-funded city planner. And on top of all that, he handed cash out at public events. He hired doctors and dentists to treat people who couldn't afford healthcare. He dressed up as Santa Claus sometimes, and he sponsored local sports teams. If he wasn't Colombia's biggest criminal, he probably would have won the presidency. Hell, the guy actually made it to Congress at one point. But I guess that's not really too different from the criminals in America's Congress. Anyways, if there's anything that we've learned today, it's that everyone has some good in them. But don't get it twisted, they're still all evil bastards. And that's all I got for today. Okay, thank you.